All right, we're about to get started, everybody. Everyone got a good seat? Everyone comfy? All right. All right. We got a few seats. Yeah, we got a few seats. Sweet. Okay. If you have not got pancakes yet, there are still more pancakes. Please eat them and take them home. We will take as many as you want. We have to-go containers. We found out about 30 minutes into cooking we did not have any propane. We're like, why are they taking so long? So they're nice and warm if you want some pancakes. But welcome, everybody. Everyone awake? Feeling ready to learn on a weekend? Sweet. My name is Morgan. I'm the Outreach and Engagement Manager here at Cape River Watch. If you have not met me yet, this is my second seminar, so we're going strong. I will be your host for these seminars throughout the rest of the year and into next year. I'm glad to provide this free educational opportunity for you guys. Is anyone new? That's a good question. Any first timers? Welcome. So thank you for coming. A little bit about what we do here. We're big on Saturdays at Cape River Watch. So we have our first Saturday seminar where you're at right now. Next week we'll have our second Saturday cleanup where we pick a spot in Wilmington and we go clean it up. Usually do like 500, 600 pounds of trash. Big effort. And then on the third Saturday, we have fun. We go paddling with our Riverkeeper Kemp. We'll be going up to Shelter Creek and Holly Shelter later this month. So we have a lot to do here on Saturdays, on your weekends, regardless of how you like to help the river. We have lots of ways to get involved. I'm going to do a couple announcements, and then I'll pass you over to who you're really here for, Roger Shew. You're wondering what this is. This is a beautiful kayak we're raffling off. Has anyone entered our raffle yet? Yes. So if you do not know about our summer membership raffle, we have this beautiful kayak. It's a Targa 100 recreational kayak. It's worth $999. It's a really nice kayak, and we're giving it away for free if you join or renew as a Cape River Watch member through September 19th. So basically, you just go to our website. If you are already a pre-existing member and you'd like to know if you're currently still a member, I can look that up for you at some point today. And if anyone wants to renew with me or join with me, I can also manually do that for you. It's a little bit easier to do it in person than online nowadays. But anyone who's entered, regardless of what membership level you choose, as little as $5, you're supporting us, and you're able to get the chance to win this beautiful kayak to go out and explore the river yourself and kind of see the work we're doing firsthand. We're also giving away a composter, if anyone's into composting. If you go out to the right, to our native plant garden, don't look at the weeds. It's been raining a lot. We have one out there. You can look at that one, and that's the one we're giving it away. And we're also giving away some 2 free photo books from local photographer Steve Brim. We have them at the front on our outreach table. Feel free to look through those. Yeah, lots of ways to get involved with the river through our raffle and also support our work to make sure that we still have a river to enjoy. And then bring a little bit home with you with that composter and that free photo book to kind of remember what we're doing at home. So we have that going on. I think that's the only really big announcement I have going on right now. But just keep an eye on our newsletter. If you're not signed up, we have a sign-up sheet right at the door. That's where you learn about all these fun events we have going on, raffles, fundraisers, everything we got going on is in our newsletter. And I think that's all I have. But if anyone has any questions about the raffle or membership or just what the heck we do here, feel free to come say hi to me. I'm more than happy to tell you all about us. But I'll pass it away to Roger. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all for coming. Good to be back. I'm a board member of River Watch, as well as these other things you see down here. And as I like to tell people, my board representation is river, soil, and trees. And so being all those things, it's an integrated approach to actually looking at stuff, which is what I try to do. And by the way, for those of you who don't know, I did retire from UNCW in July. But I may be back. But I do still have my UNCW email because I'm working with things and doing things. In fact, I'm trying to get some bees into a garden that I put on campus last year to put those in. So we got a community garden on campus. And F. Henwood is still my baby out in Brunswick County here to take care of that too. For those of you who haven't been, make sure and go. We planted trees down there and other things. But anyway, I have a lot here, probably too much for what you guys want to do. If you get up and have to go, that's fine. You know, if I'm still talking, as I've gotten older, I've gotten more wordy and lots more stuff to actually cover. So what I'd started to do was just talk about our local area. But there's been some things that's happened over the past few months that warrant comment. And in warranting comment, what I'm going to do is try to show you a couple of larger issues to begin with and then move into the Cape Fear River watershed. But all these larger issues actually have ramifications for us as well, as usual. So I'm going to ask you guys. So if you were to think about current issues, environmental, let's just stick with that, at a national level, but also have implications for the state and local, what would you say? These are current things.
Clean water.
Clean water. Sea level rise.
Clean wetlands.
The wetlands. Global warming. Port deepening.
Clean air.
Clean air.
Undoing regulations.
Pellets. Regulations. Loss of
insects.
Loss of insects. There is the windshield effect, as you all know. I mean, whenever I was driving in Brunswick County back in the 70s, you know, you'd have to clean your window every other day. In fact, I worked at a service station where I had to wash windows. I can tell you there were a lot more insects hitting the windshield then than now. So these are ones that pop up to me that are huge, huge, and you mentioned just about every one of these. And one of them, though, that you mentioned indirectly with climate change and others is the endangerment findings issue that we've got right now. The roadless rule, Endangered Species Act, energy, renewable energy, PFAS, of course, and wetlands. Now, I could talk about this one a while. I urge you, I put something on Sierra Club website there that describes and talks about wetlands in a very short fashion, that talks about, you know, the Sackett versus EPA and the Farm Bill as well. But I'll indirectly mention those. So I want to show you a couple of these things because you have an opportunity, because my mission today was to get you to see things that you could do as well. And so the first one I just want to mention to you is the endangerment finding. So it turns out in 2009, the endangerment finding, basically the EPA administrator, current and projected concentrations of greenhouse gases actually do threaten public health and welfare of current and future generations. And so what that basically said was that you would be looking at, you know, motor vehicles and the emissions that they put out to try and control some of those. This was actually based on a Massachusetts versus EPA ruling with the Clean Air Act, as was mentioned, in 2007. So that was in place. Basis of, you know, some of our rules and regulations. And in 2017, 2019, the EPA at that time said that they were going to petition, or the people petitioned the EPA to say that these should not be held. These are regulations that are too stringent and should not be part, really, of the Clean Air Act. Well, EPA denied those petitions. Well, the current administration, by the way, this is Lee Zeldin, EPA administrator. EPA proposal to rescind they call it Obama era, but it's not Obama era. I mean, this was during Obama's administration. But basically, this was looking at what you could do with the rescinding of this, the value of rescinding this piece of legislation or Endangerment Act. And basically what they said was, we're wasting about $1 trillion in undue regulations, and we're wasting about $54 billion annually on these rules and regulations. So Lee Zeldin released the agent's proposal to rescind this particular finding. Okay? So one of the things it said is that the former, or the current, because it's not repealed, the current Endangerment Act, results in greenhouse gas emissions that are really, harmful to people. And in fact said that we heard loud and clear from folks and businesses that CO2 is not the threat to Americans' livelihood. This rule is the threat to your livelihood. Okay? So if you look at this, businesses had actually gone in and were basically, tooling along, because business wants certainty. And that certainty was that we're going to have these rules and regulations, and we'll have these things that are set forth so that we'd be able to actually plan our business. Okay? So NPR had a big thing on this I just wanted to show you. So what you can see here, though, is, what is the benefits, though, of this finding? It says it's controlling our warming planet. Climate change. And by the way, as I told my students, and I still tell anybody to listen, is that you can't say climate change is not occurring. Nobody in their right mind can say climate change is not occurring, because all climate change is change in temperature and precipitation over an average 30-year period of time. And we know for an absolute fact that's occurring. USDA has seen that in the movement of the zones for growing plants and stuff. We've seen this. There is no doubt of that occurring. Now, you can argue about some of the causes, but not that it's not occurring. More frequent intense heat waves, increased ground level ozone, that's of course associated with the vehicles. More severe storms, spread of diseases. So anyway, the idea here is to rescind this particular endangerment finding. So what's going to happen whenever they do this is it will eventually go to the Supreme Court. Now, back in 2007, Justices Stevens, Kennedy, Souter, Ginsburg, and Breyer all were the ones voting to support this endangerment finding. Every one of them are gone. And the people that dissented at that time was Chief Justice Roberts, Justice Scalia, Thomas, and Alito. Scalia is, of course, not there anymore, but we have several others. So this particular thing is concerning to me. So whatever your comments are, or whatever your thoughts are, I just offer that you can make your comments. And so right now, and it goes through September 15th, whether you agree or disagree, because I never tell people what they should do. You should do things that you think are correct. The thing that you should do, though, is make your comment. And so right now, there's 3 ways to make comment. It's on the website, email, and you can even mail it as well. And so this is the information that you would need to do to actually send your comments in. There's a lot of them in there already, I can tell you. You look, there's some interesting ones as well.
I did take a picture of that, but will that be available online somewhere?
Morgan, what I can do is I'll take some of these things that are rules and regulations and stuff, and how about if I send you those slides?
That would be excellent.
And then you could post those, maybe?
Yes, thank you.
We'll have the recording online afterwards, and then we'll put all the links available as well.
Well, there's another one that I love, the Eagles, so I really like this one. So what the current administration said is the Endangered Species Act is like Hotel California. You can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave. And so what they're saying is that things listed on the endangered species list never come off the endangered species list. Well, that's not entirely true. So in looking at this, it turns out that the endangered species list has had some issues with it. But one of the things that has been found to be issues is low conservation funding. Politics have flip-flopped, over time on these things. Look at habitat, wildlife, habitat loss. And oftentimes they've waited too long to list species too. If they've already gotten to the point where there's just a few species left, then you got an issue to begin with, all right? So it turns out in looking at this that Secretary Burgum said that actually, we're doing some positive things. For instance, the Roanoke log perch was delisted, indicating the ESA is no longer Hotel California under Trump. Well, the only problem with that is that that started being delisted back in the Biden administration. So all I want people to do is look at the facts. That's what I really want people to do. Don't believe everything that's on the surface. You need to look a little bit underneath that information. And in fact, if you look at it, 54 species have been delisted since 1973, including our bald eagle. And my wife's favorite bird, the brown pelican. When we were kids here in the 60s, right here, you never saw a brown pelican. Never. They all went down Louisiana. It's the brown pelican state. It took a while to recover those things. And now it's beautiful to see them sailing right over the top of the water. But others, and by the way, the snail darter, remember the one that was the big issue of the day? That's even recovered. So the benefits of our species are multitudinous. Those are just some numbers of a few things: mangroves, insects pollinating, tourism with right whales, et cetera, et cetera. Money is important. The economy is important to us. So you should support the endangered species. Well, the other one that's come up of late is the roadless rule. And the roadless rule has been going on since 2001. This has been the most commented on legislative piece ever. And what this does is basically shut down going into national forest areas and building lots and lots of new roads. And the Tongass is one of the ones that was a big deal about this. But the current administration says that, these are burdensome regulations and this should be looked at. Well, comments on this one you can make by September 19th. But let me just show you a little piece of this. This was in the Coastal Review Online the other day. And so I'd like to highlight them. It's a great group. If you don't get that, you should make sure and get that. Targeting national forests. This isn't just out west. North Carolina, Nantahala, Pisgah, and Croatan have roadless areas too. So North Carolina also has roadless areas that are important. And so what they said that they want to lift this rule so that they can expand U.S. timber production, boost energy production on federal lands, and also, stem the tide on forest fires. And I'll say that we do need to do some things like mining, but there are sites to do this. I have a whole talk I'd love to give you sometime on that, because critical minerals that are powering everything that we got with renewables and EVs and other stuff, we need those minerals. And a place to be would be Salton Sea out in California, where you could get lots of lithium and others. So there are things that you can do for this. So in looking at this, the USDA has said that this poses undue burden on the production of the nation's timber, identification, development, and use of domestic energy and mineral resources. And so I say, is that really true? So what the roadless rule is intended and has done is maintain wildlife habitat. You all know that biodiversity is really impacted by fragmentation. You put roads through something, you really start destroying biodiversity. That's one reason we've talked about not having roads up in sledge forest in those wetland areas, as a matter of fact. But we also look at this and say, well, it's clean water because you reduce runoff. you improve infiltration. By the way, that's the same thing in Wilmington and New Hanover County. If you maintain natural areas, you minimize stormwater runoff, you minimize pollution going into our waterways. Trees and natural areas are amazing. We don't have to do anything. They just do it on themselves. The other thing is, if you log old forests, they're gone. Recreation is really important. And it turns out that they say for fire control, well, it turns out that 85% of wildland fires are caused by humans. So if that's true, you know, increasing roadways into those actually moves humans into those areas even more than what they are. So this one is really important as well. Now I mentioned to you about the energy, right? Everybody said we've got to have these areas for energy. Well, you know what happened last year? We produced more energy in this country than ever before, ever. And that's natural gas, that's oil. And notice what's happening with wind and solar. So the fact is, we've been given a line that our energy production is being impaired. It's just not true. And in fact, you know, if you look at the wind, well, the wind is the worst form of energy, the most expensive form of energy. It kills the whales, drives them crazy, and they kill our beautiful birds. I'm not saying who said that. But let's look at the facts. Let's look at the facts. This is collisions with onshore wind turbines. Oil pits, electrocutions, collisions with electrical lines, vehicles, cats. Feral cats kill more birds by far than anything else. By far. I can show you multiple ones of those. But let's look at the other stuff, the most expensive and that. This is the expense of these things. Onshore wind, solar PV. Onshore wind, solar PV. These are comparable with gas now. This isn't me saying this, it's a very respected Lazard report if you want data. Now, offshore wind is a different matter. It is more expensive, without question. But if you look at it, you had to start. And it turns out that wind and solar have dramatically declined in price and dramatically increased in amount. So what has happened? You know, offshore North Carolina, we had Kitty Hawk Wind Farm that was supposed to be due to come online with its first phase in 2027. Offshore Brunswick County, Duke and Total Energy were going to put those off of Bald Head, about 16 to 18 nautical miles. Okay? By the way, you can barely see them at 16 to 18 nautical miles. And so when you look at this, what he said was that these are the wind and solar are the scam of the century. Vowed not to approve any of these. We've got farmer destroying solar projects. And the days of stupidity are over in the USA. So in looking at this, I don't care what people say, I want the facts. So when I look at the facts, it turns out that in this particular one that was just halted off of Rhode Island, this particular one was over 80% done. All the permits were in, they were ready to start next year. So in looking at this, what he said was that this is threatening wildlife, and the fishermen have said this. I love fishermen, I love to fish. But the fishermen up there were saying that it threatens wildlife in these areas, and it harms their catch. Well, NOAA and others state unequivocally that boat strikes and fishing gear are the real dangers to right whales. Every one that they've found that's been harmed or killed has been related to those things. It is not the sound of wind turbines or being in the way that makes that occur. It's been shown over and over. So it turns out that states up there, Rhode Island, Connecticut, and the companies, Orsted, are suing the Trump administration over him stopping that wind farm. That just came out on September 4th. And this is the thing that you should do. So if you look at these wind turbines and solar farms, well, what actually is the story with renewable energy? Let me ask you, what is the number one source of new electricity generation in the United States in 2025?
Solar.
It's solar. Followed by batteries because of the storage, followed by wind, followed by natural gas. And you can see some of those in North Carolina. And even the sheep love solar. The sheep have their posters up there. They're raring to go. Because sheep see these things. This is called agrivoltaics, something I'm hyping for, on part of the Independence Boulevard, which, the city and the county have supported down with the Flossie Bryan area down on Independence Boulevard. But you can do this. It's not getting rid of farms. And you don't put solar on the best farm area anyway. That would be stupid. You put it on the poor land areas. But you can also have secondary things with crops or grazing. And in fact, this one, solar farms are booming in the U.S. and putting thousands of hungry sheep to work. I mean, goodness, it doesn't get any better than that. And you might have heard that Duke Energy has changed their plan for offshore. So they have basically backed out because of the expense of that particular area off of Bald Head Island. And stepping back, this is going back on some of the things that they decided and doing. By the way, I'll say Duke has some good ideas for supplying some energy, because with all of the AI battery storage and computer areas that we're requiring, we got to have a lot more energy. There's just no doubt about that. But they also need to adhere to some of the plan too, because now what's happened with the state and Duke is that they've basically done away with that interim CO2 reduction that was done. They still kept the 2050 CO2 plan, but basically they've said, we're not going to have this intermediate thing because there's too many issues associated with it. So unfortunately, in looking at these things, I think we should be talking to a lot of people about the value of wind and solar, but also having smart. I'm a nuclear person. I like nuclear. I'll just tell you up front. And what they're saying is to have some of these modular reactors. The bad thing about nuclear that we've done in this country of late is we've always built these big, giant nuclear plants that, this one's like this, and this is different, and this is different. That leads to cost. You have a uniform design, becomes less expensive, and satisfies some of that area, okay? And I can talk to you about that sometime. Well, what about the other one? How about some PFAS? Well, this one actually bothers me a lot too, because we've been looking at that for Riverwatch, and Dana's in the room today, been a real advocate about looking at the truth associated with this. And something that really bothers me is whenever good rules and regulations are starting to come into play, and then they start backing off of it. And that's exactly what's happened here. And in looking at this, who has been one of the pushers of this? It's the Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber of Commerce, by the way, spend more on lobbying than anybody else. And one of the things that they've said is that, we need to delay these PFAS rules until we know all about how it's going to impact our business. Well, how's it going to impact the people? And the people are what drives business, in my opinion. So in looking at this, Peter Castagno did a real good thing last year, and Lisa Sorg always does some good work too. So these were the rules or the limits put in place by the former EPA. That's there. Well, the current EPA is basically looking at, they're going to keep PFOA and PFAS, but delay by 2 years of implementing that. And then the other ones down here, they basically removed those from the discussion process for right now. Okay? So why is that concerning? Well, 300 water systems in North Carolina, 3.4 million people are impacted by this. Cape Fear Public Utility paying $46 million, Brunswick County over $100 million. Thankfully, they finally got their act together over there with lawsuits and others. But all of that is looking at this. And so why are we concerned? Well, there's health issues associated with it. And this was one of the things that came out in looking 2023, the fish advisory, all the way from there, Fayetteville, all the way down to the bluffs on the Cape Fear River. And looking at these to have these limits on the fish consumption that you would have, because we know there's impacts. Don't tell me there's not impacts. We know there's impacts. And in fact, this is the advisories. So 1 meal a year for those guys, for the general population, for vulnerable ones, don't eat any of them. Why is this? These are top predators. So they've eaten all the other stuff to accumulate, that bioaccumulation idea that we've got. And what we can do is look at all these things, and by the way, you can see this is a nice little website. You can go ahead and click on these and see what things are at those particular locations, as a matter of fact. So this is what I think about when I think about southeastern North Carolina. This is my model for southeastern North Carolina. These are Roger Shew's natural treasures of southeastern North Carolina. And to me, if we can maintain those things, I understand development, I understand growth, but there's ways to do this, okay? And these are ones that I just really find amazing. So these are things that have been picked for Wilmington, since we're here in Wilmington. 10 unique things to love about Wilmington. AI, I gotta get an AI in there, right? AI top picks about Wilmington. So all of these things are ones that you look at. Look at that, historic downtown, beaches, river, beautiful nature, oh my. Industry for film, Curie Beach, Thalian Hall, all of these things are so amazing for us. And we could talk about all of these as well. But I have another question for you. So I talked about the big issues, but what about the issues and decisions facing southeastern North Carolina? All right. The bridge. Development. Overdevelopment. Sledge forest. Dredging. Beach erosion. Sewage. Port expansion.
Yes.
Trash.
Flooding.
Flooding. Thank you very much.
Oh, we forgot animal operations.
Look at these things. You just said it. Now, all of these have positives to talk about, but there's also some negatives. And what we need to do is identify ways that we can actually know the facts, make comments on the issue, and convince people of what the facts actually are saying. Because unfortunately, people are not very good these days, and it's because they're overwhelmed of actually being able to extract the actual facts. It's a problem, I'm telling you. As a teacher, I was always on the computer trying to get that stuff for the students to be able to see so they could weigh things and make decisions. Because that's what we should be doing. Right? Yeah. All right. So these are just one, so I thought I would try to cover a couple of these. Each one of these is an hour-long presentation, by the way. I'm honest. I mean, these things are really, and some of you have sat through a couple of my presentations. But, you know, the bridge, I have a whole thing on the history of the bridges, not just the Cape Fear Memorial, but the other guys too. So let me just show you a couple of things associated with these. But first off, what is the Cape Fear River and the Cape Fear River estuary? Well, it turns out we got to go about 30 miles, give or take, from Bald Head Island all the way up to Wilmington and then beyond. And what this is called is the estuary. And it's just an enclosed body of water where you get mixtures of fresh and salt water through the tide exchange that we have. And all of this is showing different kinds of vegetation. So we start out down here with salt marshes, then we get up into the mixed marsh and forest areas until we finally get up into the bottomland hardwoods that are the cypress trees. But that change has salt water down here at normal salinity about 30 to 35 parts per thousand, and by the time you get up here, it's less than 1 or 2 parts per thousand. But it's changing. So there's what it was back in about 1920. You might notice there's no bridges. There were no bridges connecting Brunswick County to Wilmington until 1929. That's how you got across the river. And you know this is about 1920 plus because that's a modern ferry. My wife's grandfather worked one of these where it was just a little ferry with a small motor on it. And by the way, I still call this the causeway on Brunswick County. The old timers still call it the causeway because that's what it was at the time. That's how you got across. And so what has happened since that time? Well, there's what that same picture looks like today. So Isabel Holmes, Thomas Rhodes, and of course the Cape Fear Memorial Bridge. So that's when it was under construction. You notice there's Surrey Street, Front Street, there's the off ramps and stuff being put in the big guys here, and there got the pieces. But you know what they had to do over on Eagles Island? They had to dig out the marsh muds so that they could then put in fill that would support the roads and the overpasses. And that's what will happen again when you do a bridge because they're going to have to do it side to the other. So what has happened? Well, it turns out that the plan, and you guys, I know I made comments, probably made some comments and said there was a 65-footer with span could rise to 135. Then you had the 135-foot fixed span. And then what we were told originally was that there was a 100-foot fixed span as well. Well, it turns out, from what the Army Corps says, is that 100-foot was never actually under consideration. Let me show you why that should be in consideration. But what the Coast Guard has now said is that that determination, they agree with the Corps that 135 feet for a fixed bridge is best. The fixed bridge is definitely best. Because if you have one that has that span rising up and down, that is just going to be maintenance nightmare just like we have now. Okay? So, by the way, it escalated in price up to $1.1 billion. You know, that was like 400 million 2 years ago. I know inflation's bad, but my gosh. And so the Corps actually has said they prefer 147 feet. So what did the Coast Guard originally say? The Coast Guard put out a study. They interviewed all the businesses north of the bridge and said, do you need anything of a tall bridge above, say, 100 feet? Not a one. Not a one. There were surveys found no vessels required over 100-foot clearance. So that study was what the Coast Guard came up with. So let me just show you. There have been higher than 100-foot vessels come north of that bridge. These are some of them. The Bark Eagle, tall ships, tall ships, tall ship, okay? What tall ship or anything that's come through in the last 5 years up the river? There it is, that's coming now. Man, that was great timing, right? This one came in 2024, but that's not 100 feet. That did not have to raise that bridge. Well, it had to raise this one because it's only 65, but a 100-foot bridge, that would not have to raise. So I'm going to tell you, if I look at this, why would we spend $300 million plus to have a 135 or 137 foot, 47 foot bridge in this area if it's not needed?
Cruise ships?
Can you do that up above that or below?
Below.
Okay. I'm just asking. These are decisions that we should make. Now, maybe the decision is that we should do this. I'm just saying, look at the data, make the assessment based on real data, and not what somebody thinks. If there's a real reason for putting a taller bridge in, by all means, yes. I haven't seen it yet. And in fact, this is what the 100-footer would look like. There's the on-ramps and off-ramps. By the way, the 100-footer wouldn't have as much impact in the historic district nor in these low-income areas right here as well. So, decision has been basically made, but I think it's still worthy of comment. And in fact, for those who haven't seen it, this is what the plan looks like for the deck. Every one of those bridges will have the same deck. It's 3 lanes in each direction, and there's an emergency lane as well, which is really great planning. That's smart, really smart. And there's a pedestrian side. So this is the plan. This is what the bridge will 90+% be on the top. So you mentioned, since we're on the bridge, talk about deepening. Well, the deepening has occurred since 1871 on the Cape Fear River. And it's gone from about 12 feet. Some places were deeper, but average was 12 feet. That was the limitation. So as you got bigger and bigger vessels, deepening, 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 and by 2001 to 2003, the river was deepened to 42 feet. Except out here where it was 44 feet. Okay? Boats are changing. Okay? Bridges are changing. I mean, the shipping on the river is changing to get to this. Okay? By the way, just as a little note, 1961, as I've told people, my father was on that tug. And this, you see all those live trees right there? Anybody been to the battleship, looked at the trees?
No.
Don't look that way, do they?
Parking lot.
It's a parking lot, but also what is it? It's a ghost forest. Now there's reasons for deepening. Look at this. Jobs, tax revenue, economic output. This is really, really big. I mean, really big for the state, for Wilmington, New Hanover County. This is big. And the thing that we should be looking at here is thinking about, what the value of this is and what the implications are. So that's what the Army Corps of Engineers has been doing over the past year. They took our comments last year. They're supposed to be incorporating them into an EIA, and this fall they're supposed to come out with a draft EIA. Okay?
What's an EIA?
Environmental impact statement, EIS, environmental impact statement. Okay? Now, once that comes out, you'll now have another public comment period that you can make comments on those as well. Then they'll go away for another year to come up with the final environmental impact statement on this, okay? So stay tuned, it's supposed to be coming. So this is what they're gonna do all the way from up here at the port, down past, by the way, all of these bird islands down here. Use some of those, the dredge material for the bird islands as well. And then you get down here, and then you got to dredge 8 miles out into the ocean. So this will be 47 feet from there up to the port, and then this will be 49 feet out into the ocean. Hey, if it's not 49 feet in the ocean, you can't get the ship into the river, right? So that's got to be dredged. This is what's got to be moved. 4 million cubic yards of rock, 22 million cubic yards of sediment to deepen the river. So there'll be some blasting in the river to remove Castlehane limestone, which is what that will be, digging into. So this is a picture. There's the bridge. This is the turning basin that was expanded a couple of years ago. And by the way, just for size scale, there's the battleship next to the Panamax ship. And so these are big, big ships. These cargo ships are huge things. So what happens whenever you deepen this area? We've already seen it. So one thing that happens is you increase tidal range. If we increase from 42 to 47 feet, tidal range will change by 4 inches, 2 on the high, 2 on the low side. You'll get another inch of storm surge, and salinity will increase by 1 part per thousand near the surface, but at depth, because salt water is heavier than fresh water, it'll be a 5 parts per thousand at the bottom. Okay? That's the increase that we'll see. And this is one of the things that the Corps will be looking at. And also what you do with the dredge spoil material. This is very important, what's going to be done with that. So let me just show you one thing that happened following the deepening that occurred in 2001 to 2003. This is Town Creek. Ports are up there, and Wilmington is too. Town Creek. See the lines? Straight lines? Humans made those in, right? It's a straight line in nature, humans made it. All right? So if you see a straight line, humans made it. These are the rice fields down on Town Creek. You know what that is? Golf course. So look at this. This is the marsh along the creek. I want to bring your attention to this area right here. This is a picture in 2003. The yellow arrow is going to be at the same picture in the next one. This is 2003. All this green is bottomland hardwoods, cypress, gum trees. That's 2021. That's salt water. You're actually converting the forest into marsh areas. That's there. And in fact, we know this is occurring not just down south of us, it's occurring north of us because one of our students did a master's thesis up on Smith Creek. And what we see is the progression of Smith Creek of salt water. Fresh water, brackish, more salty. And so the trees are dying back as they move like this on there. So we know the impacts. The question is, you weigh all these things as to what you need to do. But we need the facts to tell people what's going on. So in our area, we have what's called compound flooding. And we're just blessed because we got 5 ways that we can flood. Okay? We can get just rainfall. We can get storm surge. We can even get rainfall from upstream, sea level rise, and high tide flooding. And by the way, I always like to show this because red is high, blue is low. Why did they build Wilmington? It was high. And by the way, this is one of my favorite pictures just to show you the impacts of brown water versus black water streams. See that, how it's brown? That's sediment being brought down here from the Piedmont via the Cape Fear. This is a black water stream. Coastal plain streams don't start up in the Piedmont. And there is no clay really in the coastal plain that will lead to, that kind of look, okay? So black water, brown water. This is during Hurricane Matthew, by the way. And of course, what's happening with some of this area? This is Eagles Island. This is the road to the battleship. Several of you have seen me show this picture before. It's actually, if you want to see what's going to happen 30 years from now, this picture is it. Because this was a 2-foot rise associated with high tide flooding on the road to the battleship. That car stalled out, that truck had to pull them out. This is 2 feet, so everything you see there in blue is underwater. That's the road to the battleship. Now the problem with that is, by 2060 to 2070, every day at high tide will look just like that. Because NOAA has said we're going to have a 2-foot rise in sea level by 2060 to 2070. Okay? Future. That's what we need to look at. And this is why we argued you should not build big things on Eagles Island. Oh, by the way, and that's Point Peter Road as well, where the tall condominiums were proposed to be put too. And of course, rising sea levels and stuff can impact these straight lines or the rice fields on Eagles Island. Amazing stuff, amazing history associated with this. And we're trying to put in some paddle trails and other things associated with this. And by the way, you see how that widens? That's where the Liberty ships were stored on the Brunswick River. And this is what the history looks like. I'm a huge proponent of maintaining history. This, the maritime history of Wilmington, et cetera, et cetera. And all of these are former rice fields, or rice plantations along the Cape Fear. There were 3 on Eagles Island. All of those remnants, which wasn't much, those would be underneath the dredge spoil at the southern end of the island now. And these are just to show you what we are hoping to do, is Belleville, Leland, Yavassa here at the battleship of putting in paddle trails with information at each one of these, and then being able to go through and let people actually see all this history that we got. And all along here, of course, is the maritime history that we've got. There's what we'd like to do on Eagles Island, is to create a nature park with stuff that's up off the ground. If it floods, who cares? Waters go down, you go back. But highlight our culture. So are we flooding? Well, land parcels, improvements, buildings, the rising sea. New Hanover County, 98,000 land parcels, 115,000 acres are assessed at having possible issues in the coming years with this. And if you look at this part, this is from First Street, which is a really good group. First Street, here you can see New Hanover County. That's the percent of ones that are at risk of flooding. And then this is the U.S., this is North Carolina, and of course Durham down here. And so one of the things that was mentioned earlier was about what's happening with our energy, that we don't want to be doing things, we want to do more fossil fuels and all that kind of stuff. Well, you know what's happened over the last few years? There are 15 days longer summer now than it was 30 years ago. Just 30 years, 15 longer summer. In fact, it goes from June 3rd to September 14th instead of June 12th to the 9th. And so when you look at this, this is the rise in the CO2. And by the way, one of the comments that was done for the Endangerment Act, he said CO2 is really good and all these new plants are going to grow and take up all that CO2. And it is. Plants do grow better with some CO2. At least a lot of plants do. Absolutely true. But have you seen or do you see a decrease in CO2 with all those new plants? It's still doing this. we're adding 2.5 to 3 parts every year. And this is down at Southport. It just ain't Wilmington or New Hanover County. Police chief says, what's going on? My streets are flooded. This was not a hurricane. This was high tide flooding. And Leland, Brunswick County, town of Leland trying to develop routes that they can safely get in. Everybody knows about our no-name storm last year, right?
Yeah.
This is the no-name storm. And all these are areas that are flood sites. This, in fact, is Highway 17 at Town Creek. And you probably heard about, the councilman at Leland, at least Bill and Veronica, have been introducing information or bills or legislation, whatever you want to call it, with the county and city, is to try and put in some rules and regulations that are stiffer for developing in some of these areas. And I had to throw this one, you got to have a dog in the picture. I mean, if you don't like anything else, you got to feel sympathy for a dog. So. And of course, there is high tide flooding days on the increase. And then this is the average estimate by 2021, or 2100, that will be up over 1 meter. Some people putting that as a conservative estimate. And of course, associated with those things, storm surge and storms, this just came out August 29th. Says share of major hurricanes over Atlantic is rising over time. Actually, there's a cycle within storms, by the way. You can see it. It's a known fact. But what you're seeing is a slight increase like that, even with those cyclicities. So climate change is making hurricanes because they're warmer waters, warmer air can hold more moisture. And of course, I'm not going to sing it, but I think you know that. Yep. And admit that the waters around you have grown and you're going to be drenched to the bone. Boy, old Dylan back in the 60s was pretty prophetic, right? Yeah. Yeah. And of course, we're just at the anniversary of what hurricane? Fran. That's the last Category 3 storm that hit this area, by the way. And major storm should be coming back every 17 to 20 years for us, according to history. So we're overdue. And just any kind of hurricane is every 6 to 7 years in here. And since September 10th is right around the corner, that's the peak hurricane season. Now some of you may, I'm feeling pretty good right now. We haven't had much, but that's because we had vertical wind shear, lots of dry air coming off of Africa. Looks like that's changing. So we still got a couple of months of time. Cross your fingers, it stays like this. So, I got a lot of sayings for you guys today. There's the toast for North Carolina, right? Here's to the land of the longleaf pine. This is the green swamp, one of my favorite places on earth. And by fire and other things can maintain this. This is a development in Brunswick County. And by the way, you know that's not the same picture because that's a loblolly. You guys all know that well. Okay? That tree is dead. It can't grow. I mean, they bulldozed all the root zone. You got to have the root zone to protect the trees.
There's that orange fence.
And this is clear cutting and burning the piles. Neither one of which is a good thing to do. So what has Wilmington and New Hanover County said? What have you said is the biggest issue in this area? Growth and development, traffic congestion, Here's some climate and environmental concerns. And for the county down here, natural areas and critical environmental features are enhanced and protected as a goal for us. I think those are really worthy goals, and I think our city and county have actually done some really good things of late. Honest. I applaud the mayor because he's actually supported some of this stuff. And our commissioners and city council have supported some of these things. This is really important to us because what's really good? Natural areas or trees help to mitigate health and safety risk, enhance quality of place, enhance the economic value of place. Don't tell me it doesn't. I can tell you, I can show you facts and data that supports having natural areas keeps that value of your land higher. Honest. So let me show you an example. This is down along River Road. So this particular picture is in 2007. That's 2024. And this area, see what they did? That's a clear cut. They cleared everything out so they could then put the roads in. And then what do? You come back in with shrubs and a tree that has a caliper of 1 to 2 inch. That's going to be 30 to 40 years before you have a natural looking area there. Now, why couldn't I just maintain stuff on there? I would have been happier if I bought that house, if there was actually a tree sitting there. And all these other benefits too, with stormwater management, etc. So, Wilmington areas grows, natural resources are being threatened. But one of the things that's happened is there's been a tree canopy study to try and identify, what we've got. And this tree canopy study, and looked at things, it noted, what the reduction was in tree canopy from 2016 to 2020. It talked about, what the different vegetation is. And by the way, I am not a purist because Wilmington, North Carolina needs azaleas and crepe myrtles. I don't care what anybody says. They're not the best for insects and bees or anything, but I mean,
They're pretty.
they're nice. But the thing is, we need to keep those other natural things in place to support that area. I mean, I like the Azalea Festival. Okay? So sometimes things die and you got to replace them. So let me just show you this really quick. I know I've run way out of time. This is the Northeast Cape Fear River. And you see that area outlined in yellow? That is what the North Carolina Natural Heritage Group has said is one of the best, I mean, I'm not saying good, one of the best natural areas for biodiversity in all of North Carolina. In fact, nationally, that area has now been recognized as national historic, or not historic, but heritage site. Okay? And you know what's right there? That's Sledge Forest. And Sledge Forest is looked at by the Natural Heritage Group because it's got hundreds of years old pines, longleaf pine, big cypress, and others that area is really significant. Now, this is the area that you've got. There's the river. There's the place that wants to be developed. This is actually the upland area. But originally they were looking at putting some things out here too. So all this is up in flux and for discussion. But we just argue that this area is so amazing that this should just not be touched. Some things should just not be touched. And in fact, this is one reason why it shouldn't be touched. That right there is the wetland map area. And by the way, these are even jurisdictional wetlands. These fit the EPA guidelines for an actual wetland area, okay? And so there's the 100-year floodplain, and then this is a 1-foot rise in sea level. I think you see you don't want to put anything there if you're smart. We need to have a mentality of the future. And those are wetlands, all that green. all wetlands. This is where you'd be putting the buildings for the most part. So, urban forestry is pretty important. Call it needing green with the gray. And so in urban forestry, we look at these things and say this inventory that we've got, you know, we should be adding to this tree canopy. We should have minimum areas for development and have groves of vegetation, not just trees, but the stuff underneath the trees. So urban forestry is really important to us, and let me just move through these pretty fast because they do all these things. I mean, vegetation, oh my goodness, you can't say enough. The ecosystem services of vegetation is just beyond pale. I mean, the economic benefits are huge, huge, huge. And the county, you know, I told you the city had done the tree survey. The county has too for this, and have some goals for canopy within here. Got 40,000 acres of canopy, you know, in there. The area, New Hanover County obviously is less developed than Wilmington, so about 50% tree canopy in the greater county area. But there has been a change in tree canopy even there over time. And you might see here that tree canopy over pervious surfaces, so those are natural areas, but if you go to Sidbury Road, I think you'll see that things are changing up on the northern end of the county. And I never wanted to show a picture with this without saying, shoot for some of these guys, the native vegetation that we've got, okay? So, I'm on the board of the Cape Fear Tree Alliance. So we've just put together this thing called Code and Canopy that we're hoping to, you know, get some of these ideas into the development ordinances and comprehensive plans, because these are things that talk about buffers and percent natural areas that are maintained in development areas. And that's kind of the outline. We're going to be releasing this. We've sent it to some people already, but we'll be releasing this in a month or so. And of course, I'm going to end on a very positive note. What does both parties agree on?
We need more
Trees. Planting 1 trillion trees to absorb carbon emissions there. Don't look at these guys down here. But everybody agrees on a tree, all right?
Except the developers.
But nature is not free. Nature has to be done. And as I'm sitting there paddling in my canoe or my kayak, I want to make sure people understand the value of that. And nature is not only nice to have, it's a have to have for your well-being. It's also a have to have for your economics in the area as well. And natural capital, as I call it anyway, is all of these things. Nature's benefits are so amazing. People take it way too much for granted. And so I'm going to leave it there instead of giving you the other 5 hours of this talk. And hopefully, you know, I just want to show that there are a few things that we can do, we have been doing, and, you know, just promote all those things. So thank you for sticking with me.